Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and all you folks out there who might be on Facebook or YouTube and wanting to share a safety topic. I wanted to spend a few minutes talking to you about the old school technology. Most of us grew up in the era when we had the use of sand was a pretty common practice on the highway system. And I'm really conversant with BC because I worked for the Highways Ministry for 35 years, but I noticed in many areas of Canada, they're into a new technology now. We still have to maintain our common sense need for sand, for traction restore. So don't anybody talk you into the fact that you don't need sand. You have to have sand for traction restore. So now what's happening, there's a big move on across Canada to go for the new technology and probably into the States as well, where they use a liquid de-icer, and they have a tank truck and a spray bar on the back, and they drive down the highway and they spray this liquid de-icer on the highway. Sometimes it's put out ahead of the snowstorms, and sometimes it's put on the highway during the storm. And if the road hasn't been plowed off carefully, with enough plow passes, they sometimes put the de-icer on over top of compact ice on the highway, and the ice then becomes slush. But for us older drivers who are used to having a sand there, it's somehow disappearing from the use of the contractors. So let's talk a little bit about how we have to prepare ourselves. Now, I don't have all the answers, but I have an accident-free driving record, and I like to keep it that way. So let's talk about when we're getting into the fall season just before snow. When you're driving down the highway and you've had rain, or maybe you've had some snow, but it hasn't really frozen on the highway yet. It's just kind of rain on the road. So we associate with driving down the highway, and we hear the sound of the water being picked up by the tread on the tires, and it slushes up underneath the fenders in your car, and you hear the slushing sound. Now, if we went to a situation where the water is a couple inches deep on the road, we will experience hydroplaning. That's where your tires will actually climb up on top of the water, and your front wheels will stop steering. You'll lose steering control because you lose the friction of your tire against the road surface. Now, four-wheel drive is somewhat better because you have two extra drive wheels, but once the tire is up in the air, it's going to spin. But anyway, so let's talk about that for a minute. We're driving down the road and we experience the sound of water underneath the tires, being picked up by the tires and thrown against the fender underneath your car. So you hear the slushy sound, kind of whooshing slushy sound, and that's because the water is still liquid. Now, as the temperature changes, we're driving down the highway, and if we come up a hill, we might find when you drive up a mountain pass, partway up the pass, you lose that sound. Now, when you lose that sound, that means to say that liquid is now frozen, and it becomes ice. It's glare ice. And glare ice is one of the most dangerous conditions, because what happens when you get glare ice, your tires lose contact. You're onto a glare ice, and it's like a skating rink. And when you want to go skating, you put your ice skates on and you skate on solid ice. But that can happen when you're driving your car. You're driving down the road, and all of a sudden, the liquid sound goes away, and the sound becomes still. It's a quiet sound. And at the same time you lose that, you hear the rush of your engine, and the speedometer goes up, and you're in a spin-out situation. And if you're in a corner, you're going into a corner, and you lose your traction with your steering, and you're going to lose your braking traction as well, you could very well slide off the road and wind up upsetting the vehicle. And if there's no guardrail there, you might slide right off the road and roll down in the ditch and be into a major accident with serious damage and death. Or you might also experience a head-on collision with the oncoming vehicle, because if you're losing your steering control, he's probably losing his too. So it's something that we have to pay way more attention to now. I'm just trying to create a little bit of a caution thought in people's mind out there. So no, that's Mother Nature That's the one that's the sound of Mother Nature doing that, because the temperature's coming up and the water is turning to ice. Now there's a man-made one that we have to be really concerned about now too, that we're not used to. And what's happening, sometimes they're not plowing the snow often enough, or they may not even plow it. They might just let the slush build up on the road until it gets up to, who knows, a half of an inch or so. And then they send this water tank out with the liquid de-icer on, and they sprinkle the de-icer on top of the road to melt the snow before it becomes compact. Or they may wait until maybe a situation where they haven't plowed it at all, and now they've got 2 inches of compact on the highway, so they put the chemical on there. Instead of plowing the snow off with a grader with ice blades on, they just go out and put the chemical on top of it. So you're going to be watch out for those conditions, because you may find that there's no sand out there. They're trying to cut back on sand because it's expensive and they can put more money in the bank by using the chemical de-icer. But it creates a whole new situation for us drivers to adjust to. And we're seeing reports of cars off in the ditch, and buses and semi-trailer trucks off in the ditch. And it's because the drivers are not used to that. And the common sense thing would be, this is where we're losing uniformity. So as soon as you hear that sound, the slishing sound of the water stops, you're on glare ice. Now, if there's no sand, no traction restorer, you're going to go for a ride just as sure as heck. And the first one is going to be where the temperature cools down by Mother Nature, and the water on the highway becomes frozen surface. And if it's black ice, it's a dangerous condition. Now, the other one is the other way around, where they pour the liquid on the road, and they use the liquid to melt the snow, or they melt the compact that's been left, that hasn't been plowed off, and they put the liquid de-icer on top of that to melt it, to turn it to slush. Well, water will cause hydroplaning, where your wheels stop turning on the front. And slush, when you have snow that turns to slush, it'll do the same thing. So you lose your steering, and you lose your braking control as well. So you have loss of steering and loss of braking. Now, us as drivers, we're not used to having this liquid de-icer yet. And we're offering a word of caution. Be very careful out there, because we're used to the old system where you're hoping to heck that you'd see some sand. You've been driving through the water, and all of a sudden you say, maybe there's some sand up ahead. But no, it's a dangerous situation. It's glare ice. But it can be a liquid situation where glare ice is being caused because they poured the chemical down, and all of a sudden it's frozen. And it doesn't matter how a glare ice is formed, whether it's formed by Mother Nature, where the temperature is dropped and the liquid on the highway, which was water, is now turned to ice. Now you got black ice. Now, if they're pouring chemical on the road to melt the stuff that's on there that's become compact, or maybe it's during a snowstorm, and they pour the liquid chemical on there, and all of a sudden you got the liquid on the highway. And as long as it's liquid, it's probably not that bad. You just keep your speed down. But when the temperature drops, it turns to glare ice. Now we've got total loss of vehicle control. So the whole system is falling apart a little bit, because it's so inflexible, because the temperature variation is. So unless they've got some thermometers and some remote monitoring of temperatures of the road, and temperature of the road temperatures, and also the air temperatures, all of a sudden we've got glare ice forming here and there and all over the place, and drivers are not aware of it. And there's no sand. So if you're into that situation where you come upon ice forming because it's being formed by water on the road, and you've driven up a higher elevation and it's become black ice, that's one bad condition. The other condition now that we got to adjust to is the fact that they put the liquid on the road surface, and it's melting the snow that's coming down. You got water and chemical mixed. Or there's a buildup of ice on the road because they didn't plow the damn compact off, and they're pouring it on top. So now you got the slush condition right away, and then all of a sudden you got water condition. So you can lose steering and brake control there. And then as the temperature drops now, the chemical and the water freezes, and you've got glare ice. So I'm issuing a word of caution out there, and if you're finding those conditions as you drive, if you're still alive after you've tipped your car over or hit another vehicle head on and killed yourself and a few other people, if you're still alive and you're a lucky one, immediate thing is to notify the police. Notify the local RCMP or the police in that area so they can shut the road down, because they got to get out there and put sand out, or they're going to have more and more accidents. So the first thing we should do is notify the police department right away. Extreme black ice on the highway, shut the highway down, and that will cause the contractor to get out there and put some sand on. So I think our next move is to call the police immediately when you find that condition, and let them chase the contractor down and shut the road down, because it's an unsafe condition. So as drivers, until we can understand how to drive on that by slowing down or taking another route or not traveling, period. Because black ice is a condition that will kill you and kill other people. So I'm urging you to, when you find out, drive very carefully when you see that stuff happening. Watch the temperatures, watch the road conditions, and if you're driving and you find that condition, if you haven't wrecked your car, notify the police immediately about the black ice condition so they can shut the road, and also notify the Ministry of Transportation and Highways and the road contractor. But the police should be the first one to shut the road down right away to prevent more vehicle accidents from happening. So it'll give you something to think about, and remember, stick up for your rights and ask for sand. It's criminal to have that condition out on the road and not monitoring it and not putting sand down, because we need that sand to stop. It's a traction and restorer. So be very careful. We're hoping that you'll have no accidents, but I wanted to, as a fellow driver, a safe driver, I urge you to be on guard for that and tell all your friends and family and share the information, because it could save your life. Have yourself a great day.